Welcome back to This is a Live Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I have Professor Bola Akintenewa, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. And as I pointed out last week, Professor Akintenewa is also now a professor of international relations at the Achievers University, Owo, Ondo State. I also have with me Professor Anthony Kila, Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies here in Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us. Professor Akintenewa, it's good to have you back from Owo to create time for us on this program. I hope Owo is as lovely and as friendly as Lagos and Arise News environment.
But you know, it's a Dolu's place.
Okay.
And it's a quiet place. It's the place where they normally stop all those who are threatening national security.
Okay.
So you don't take Ondo State for granted.
So you are very safe there.
Of course.
It's good to hear that.
Yeah.
And then Professor Kila, very good. Well, today we've talked about a number of subjects with our two guests. With Monday Ubani, Chairman of SPIDAL of the NBA, we talked about the fact that the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal is now sitting and, you know, the process has commenced formally in terms of public expectations. We talked about prisons now, being told that at the state level, state governments will have to be responsible in line with the amendment of the Nigerian Correctional Services Act to build, to own, to manage, to fund correctional facilities across the country. We also talked about the Supreme Court decision in the Osun State gubernatorial election, declaring Ademola Adeleke as the legitimate, valid, legal winner of the election conducted in that state on July 16, 2022. And then, of course, we had Mmobuosi, the Nigerian that everyone has been talking about, trying to buy Sheffield United. But he says beyond football, there are other things he's been doing to support his country, and that he believes in Nigeria. But many sports lovers, even here at Arise News, there are some football fanatics who are monitoring that bid, and they are saying, our man has to buy Sheffield United out of national pride. Every Nigerian wants a Nigerian, whether it's Aliko Dangote or Mmobuosi, to just buy one football club. In Europe, no, Professor Akintenewa doesn't want to buy football club. He wants to set up a Department of International Relations. And congratulations, you are now on the council of that university as the representative of a congregation.
Of the congregation.
Yes, but I'd like to take your reactions to the issues on the table. Let me start with you, Professor Kila.
Well, okay, with me, where do we start from? Let's start from law and the judiciary process. So, in Osogbo, Osun State, Adeleke has been sworn in, and in Abuja, we're looking at the case of the presidential election and another thing. I have the same concerns that I had with Adeleke with the presidential election. That is that election cases should be delivered before swearing in, whoever is deemed elected. So that once somebody is sworn in, that's the final position. You don't go back again. There are two things that affect our thinking in Nigeria, which it worries me. Actually, I find irritating because it hinders our development. One is that all of a sudden, we're not able to think beyond our partisan, factional, or sectional interest. So that when you say election should be televised or should be done quickly, the first thing people are looking for is on whose side are you? How is it going to affect their judgment? How is it going to affect their opponents? Which is a wrong thing. Some people struggle to understand that some of us just want institution and are led by fact, logic, and what would outlive us. The other thing is the ability not to be able to reason beyond the status quo. So when we talk about this process, people think just because the law says that you have up to 180 days to do it, that you are stuck with that. It doesn't work. We need to imbibe a commonsensical approach to whatever we're doing. The commonsensical approach will then allow us to see what is reality and how to improve on reality. When the law says you have up to 800 days, what the law means is that you cannot use beyond 180 days. Not that you have to use all those days. What does common sense say? Common sense tells you that it is good that you don't swear in somebody that is suffering from a baggage of legitimacy. Even if that person is going to be confirmed, let it be clear from day one. And I want people to flip this. Imagine if a delegate today, as it has happened in the past, after years, is considered not to be legitimate governor. He has spent some time there. He has managed the coffers of the state. We as a people should understand that that is not acceptable commonsensically. Then based on that, we need to do two things. In the meantime, and here I go to the bench. In the meantime, common sense should push the judges on the bench to fast track things, to call people together and to say, yes, that's what the law says, but look, this is national importance. Let us act quickly. They need to start earlier, avoid any kind of delays, any kind of peculiarity or technicalities that can hinder justice. And I want to say to people that it is good that we're saying this is more possible now because we've got the electronic system. Before the BVAS and the IREF, we had the accreditation, the electronic accreditation. So there's an evolution that we've moved from one state of card readers to this final state. But let me go back in history to tell people that in 1979, elections were held. The presidential election was held, I think, in August, the 26th or so of August. And by September, Shagari and Awolowo's case had been decided when the president was then sworn in October. So people, and by then, there was no card readers, let alone BVAS, let alone IREF. It's just a matter. When we look at the historical perspective of our judicial process, then you see an evolution. Because they were able to do it then when there was no electronic thing at all. And now we're struggling to do it. It doesn't speak well of the country. And we really need to look at this thing. I have argued with some other people, thanks, not just people like me, but even some people from the bar, including Femi Falana, and other people to say that the judicial process should be televised and it should be done before May 29. So that when you win or when you lose, whatever the outcome is, everybody will see how it is done. A case in point is the case of the judgment done in the Old Bailey in London for Senator Ike Kwemrado. You can see how justice is done. Every case, every point was articulated and the whole world can see it. So there is no story. If your candidate wins, you see why he has won. If your candidate loses, you see how. There will be no doubt. And I think it's high time we need to start thinking that way. From court to prison, let's hope we do not go that way. To the prison, I agree to decentralize the prison cases. I think at the moment in Nigeria, there's about 240 or so, about less than 244 prisons, exactly, about 244 prisons. The studies I have done, I've been involved in, shows that the country needs about 550 prisons across the country. So really, it's been ratio of cases and convicted people and detained people. I think it is high time each state invest in having more prisons. And if they invest in more prisons, they also need to show before doing it that they can build and manage this prison. That is the way to go. And I want people, and here's the thing, let's not stay in the status quo. Let's not stay in the law. Let's not stay in just what we know. Let us go beyond what we know. We already have cases in the world where the prisons are privatized. It is not impossible. I encourage building more prisons because it will create jobs and it will send a message to people that there are space there if you commit crime for you. And I believe we need to take that. And I endorse state ownership of prison, and beyond that, I even endorse privatization of prisons with all the required laws to be done. So that is that. To the case of the potential or wishful Sheffield owner, I wish him very well. I wish anybody wants to do business well. But I want to caution Nigerians on misplaced identity and misplaced priority. There is no reason for any Nigerian to be excited that a Nigerian is buying a football called abroad. It's a business decision. He's investing. If he buys, he's not going to call you, your family, your church members, or anybody on how to manage his business. He's an investor looking for opportunities, and he can do whatever he likes. This idea that our own is doing it is one of the things that is destroying our mentality, because it has nothing to do with anybody. If he is investing in football or is passionate about football, he would be doing everything about football in Nigeria. the idea of saying, because I love all Nigerian football, I cannot support one, I cannot own one, he's legitimate to think so, but it doesn't stand logic at all. MK Abiola, the philanthropist of sports in Africa, gave money out, invested in a charity, he did donations to sports across Africa. Football, basketball, cricket, which I played, cricket. He gave money for cricket, and then he owned his own teams, which he supported passionately. So it is possible. I want people so that we do not waste our energy, our passion and effort in this idea of our own is doing something. It's not our own. I really want to appreciate the Dozie Mmobuosi man for understanding that the system that manages English football is not a system you can go on television to accuse of discrimination. Because the process is a process that is very clear. They will not invent, and I want to say this, they're not going to invent any point against any individual because those points are set and it is given to everybody to present. If you are a known professor, they will not ask you to go and bring your certificate of master's degree because you've already shown. So maybe, but if you are unknown and you come out to say, I am a professor, and you're not Professor Akinteriwa, somebody's going to ask you to bring all your thing. But if you're a professor of Akinteriwa, nobody's going to ask you many questions because they know your work, they know what you've done. You don't need to prove yourself. So if you're unknown, then you do need to prove yourself. And let me say this for people who do not know. Do you know that the English Premier League, majority of the owners are foreign? They're not British people. There are less owners of the English Premier League than British owners there. So it's a market that is open to international investment. And the process that is followed there is a process that has nothing that will benefit the owners when they come, because what drives them is profit and victory. And they just want to combine those things. So I want to warn Nigerians not to misplace our identity, our passion, or our patriotism in this kind of discussion. We should learn to keep an open mind and, wish the man all the best things in the world in his bid from agriculture to aviation or whatever he wants to do. Because in that same aviation, we have Allen Oyema who has done it. We have other airlines who have gotten their licenses.
Well, Prof, I get your point.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment on what you have said about the prison system.
Yes.
Okay, federalism, states you own and all of that, and abide by the amendment of the Enabling Act, and also the point you made about privatization. They do it in other parts of the world. But how about the fact that in some other parts of the world, in the Netherlands, for example, the prisons are empty?
Yes.
Because in the last 5 years, they've not been getting people to put in prison.
Yes.
Very, very correct.
Yes.
We in Nigeria get to a point where our court system, the justice administration system, will not have anybody to put in prison. Are we likely to get to that stage? Because we just take it for granted that the end of the justice administration system is for people to go to prison. In the Netherlands, they don't have people who want to go to prison or who are ready to go to prison. The prisons are empty.
Well, you see,
Professor Akinteriwa.
Agreement to disagree and disagreement to agree. Now, when you are advocating more prisons, etc., then you are saying that Nigeria, yes, we are going to have more criminals. That is what you are saying. So you are already anticipating a situational reality, probably under the incoming government, that criminals will increase in number, and you need now to have more prisons for them.
To accommodate them.
So in that case, I had in mind this case of Netherlands, to say some people have prisons, but there are no prisoners. All right? So the prisons, the correctional centers are at best good for nothing. So why is it that in our own case, we are now making creating rooms for more criminals? First point. You see, the second point there is that you do not like the idea that we should create a linkage between the nationality of you know, a Nigerian trying to buy a club, Sheffield, in the UK.
Yeah.
You see, when they talk about Pele, immediately, apart from his own person, they link him to his country.
Yeah.
They will say Brazil is a country of football. Now, when you talk about Maradona, forget the Nigerian interpretation of Maradona. But you see, the issue is that Maradona, all right, is a fantastic player.
Yeah.
Now, his country is linked to his person. So it's a very good thing. You rightly pointed out, and that's where the agreement comes in. Now, you said many clubs are owned by foreigners.
Yeah.
I will subscribe to that. You are right. But why will a Nigerian not be part of those foreigners? We are in a very competitive world.
Yeah.
Nigerians should be competing in every given, aspect of global life.
Yeah.
We should be there. So we should not just be talking about when Nigerians commit crimes or they talk about 419, etc. Now, when we really talk about prisons, I do not think that the problem is as presented, as being told generally. I had the opportunity in the past to have said that I have visited the major prisons in this country. When Ambassador Oluyemi Adeniji CON was Minister of Interior, I was SA, and we visited all these places. The most critical aspect of these correctional centers is the yet to be tried, suspects.
Yeah, absolutely.
They are there. They are the one actually creating the problem of congestion.
Congestion, yes.
Okay, so if the federal government is saying the states should now come to participate in feeding, the offenders, many questions are raised. First of all, there is nothing wrong in having the states participating. The only thing is that if states will now have to build their own correctional centers, will the correctional centers be for prisoners, offenders from that particular state? Are they going to accommodate other criminals? You see, for instance, if you commit an offense in a particular state, you evaded, you ran away, and you are caught in another state, is it the state where you are caught that will try you and put you into jail, or you will be sent back to your home state when it comes to this feeding? Because, for instance, if you look at the relationship between Nigeria and the United Kingdom on this issue of prisoners,
Yes.
what the British government has done in the past is that, look, the British complain that most of the suspects, the criminals, they are not the British people, they are not the European, they are foreigners. And they are now saying they do not want their taxes paid to government to be spent on these people. So the UK government tried, for instance, to negotiate an agreement with the government of Nigeria to say, we will bring all these criminals back to Nigeria, we will provide assistance to you. Exactly in the same way, the British say that they do not want asylum seekers there. They now settle, they give money to Rwanda, they do now send them back. So, I think that there is the need, first of all, to look at the comfort or the discomfort of the prisoners. Because if you go there, apart from the open prison in Kaduna, that can be said to be fairly good, all others, please. I told you the other time that the padlock that they put on the doors in Calabar, the one put there by the colonialists in 1911, where they kept Obafemi Awolowo, that key is still there. The one they bought after independence, it's not working. It's there. Go there. I saw this. It's not a hearsay.
Prof, you have been going to one prison to the other.
Yes, as essay. I'm not.
Okay, not in a literal sense.
Even if you want to say literal sense, because we entered there to go and see. I am a minister. We investigated and I took copious notes to say, Abba, we went to Maiduguri, we went everywhere to go and see the situation. You know, in Kuje, by the time we visited Kuje prison, please, there was only one functional toilet for, for hundreds of people. Now, the people will be crying, telling someone going there to poo-poo or to do something, to say, no, you must come out. They were struggling there. So please, those are the things we should address. Whether it is state prison, whether it is federal prison, please make, are there no, please, we visited Indonesia under Chief Ojoma Dueke, for instance. Abike Dabiri was on the delegation by that time. He was essay to Mr. President on International Relations. He will bear me witness. Those 18 Nigerians that were on death row, they were praying, they were cursing us to say our plane should crash. Because we came to beg Indonesia to say, let them come and serve their country in Nigeria. But they say they don't want to come to Nigeria. Right. That the Nigerian prison, no, it's an abuse of human rights again. A criminal that has been convicted is also talking about human rights.
So now our correctional facilities should be correctional in the real sense. They shouldn't be punitive.
Or a place to graduate from minor crimes to heavier crimes.
Yes. Okay.
So with Mmobuosi, generally speaking, look, I will agree with him that we may not push too many things. He explained why delays can be justified under a court system, saying that, look, at the level of interlocutory inquiries, you need to look at many things.
Prof, you need to look at it swiftly, given the importance.
You
need to look at it very swiftly.
No, that's part of my disagreement to agree. Yeah. And agree to. You see, here, in these court cases,
yes.
Let me tell you, I had the opportunity when I was embassy translator, Embassy of Nigeria in Paris in 1984. I was the one going to the court to go and translate for Nigerians there. So they must make inquiries. They must ask witnesses, etc. Yes. So all these facts are there. You cannot set them aside. So the court must examine them before the real case can start. That's why I agree with him.
Okay, very quickly, let's take another topic before we take another break. President Muhammadu Buhari has commended what he called the foresight of former head of state Yakubu Gowon in setting up the National Youth Service Corps in 1973. In a statement by his spokesperson, Femi Adesina, Buhari said that the scheme had truly achieved the goal of national integration by providing opportunities for cross-cultural interactions and establishing formidable bridges for improved understanding. The statement disclosed that Buhari congratulated the former head of state, all the former and incumbent directors general of the Corps for inspiring and sustaining a 50-year legacy that has strengthened a web of solidarity and bolstered loyalty to the nation. He said the scheme had also broadened the horizon of citizens, promoted civic responsiveness, created a better understanding of various individual and ethnic identities, their diversity, and underscored the bottom line of the common values of fairness, justice, peace, and unity. So here we have it, NYSC at 50. Before you came on set, I overheard Professor Kila joking with Professor Akinterewa, that he doesn't think Professor Akinterewa knows anything about NYSC, that he assumes Professor Akinterewa, that you graduated in 1934. But were you part of the NYSC scheme, and what do you think?
Yes, actually, I served. I did my NYSC at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs.
What year was that?
That was 1985.
85?
Really?
Prof?
Oh, he didn't do it immediately.
Okay, that means after your PhD, after you came back from Sorbonne.
Well, I came from University of Paris, Sorbonne. So
Okay.
I was working in the embassy before I returned.
I see. But what do you think? 50 years after NYSC?
Well, if you look at what was responsible for the establishment of the NYSC, is basically as a resultant of the Civil War. After the war, many Nigerians, jokingly and in the newspapers, I think there used to be one magazine by that time, Flamingo, where someone wrote and gave a meaning to go on with one Nigeria. In an attempt to going on with one Nigeria, Gowon came up with the policy of 3 RCs. Now he's talking about reconstruction, rehabilitation, and reconciliation. First of all, starting with reconciliation, reconcile the warring parties. Then reconstruct in terms of structure and everything, then rehabilitate. And the idea then is that, okay, we want to throw into the garbage of history the irritants, in our interpersonal, intercultural relationships. So he came up with that one, and that they want to encourage the couples to marry, intermarriages, to promote national unity and integration. Unity and integration. That was why this was put in place. And I think it started in 1973. I think it was February, Decree 24. By that time, Decree 24 established it. So, at the originating level, it was quite good, acceptable. People like that. But when government, after it had been put in place and been working, the implementation became an irritant. It became a problem. In fact, it was particularly bastardized under President Muhammadu Buhari.
General.
Well, when you can say general, when he planned coup to be head of state. But now he's president because he was elected. He was duly elected in 2015. The Punch may have his own reason.
So I thought you meant 1983. You mean 2015?
No, yes, 1915, not
2015.
In 2015, currently as at now.
Yes.
NYC doesn't have any meaning because the policy put in place directly negates what the NYC meant for. And I give you 1 or 2 examples you should know. Now, President Buhari has a nepotistic policy. Now, NYC is preaching on the one hand national unity, integration. But President Buhari is underscoring the people he knows. He told us when he was asked, why are you allowing your people in so places? Where people said, NNPC, the 21 topmost positions, they are occupied by the same ethnic groups. Then thereafter, in an interview, he was saying, well, he was employing the people he knows. What does that mean? Why should there be 20 people from the same ethnic group in one public institution when you have the policy of federal character? So, federal character now negates directly the idea of a united and integrating something. That's just one example. When you take many examples there, This same Muhammadu Buhari was on record, for instance, to have come with a very beautiful, in fact, the most beautiful policy in terms of war against indiscipline. When he started this particular policy, everybody naturally will queue up. Nobody will throw any paper dustbin off the road. But now, when he is no longer a military head of state and elected president of the people, what do people do? Where is the issue of anti-corruption, anti-indiscipline? Where are we? Please, at the end of the day, the legacy the president is trying to leave behind, I read his comments. He's commending the one that they have put NYSC something. But he's not commending himself for running that same spirit of the NYSC down. So, left to me,
well, Prof.
I am not against these 50 years of the NYSC. Fine. It has some, for instance, they have the SAED skills acquisition scheme they have put in place. That's one positive aspect. People got married there. They met themselves. It's quite good. They are preaching that. But many of the coppers themselves, they are not much happy about that. My suggestion is that, look, if we really want to continue to make NYSC an instrument of national unity and integration, if we want to make it an organ, for developing Nigeria, please, we either increase the service to 2 years, in which case, to give room for employment, ensure that when people serve and you spend 2 years in a particular community, there is no way when you leave, the language of the something, you will have a mastery of that. We will know ourselves, the better. But let us work for a nation. NYSC is to ensure one nation. But today, Nigeria has been more divided than ever before, in spite of NYSC.
Professor Akintoye, I imagine that there will be a lot that can also be said on the positive side of the value of NYSC at 50 that we can, comment upon and promote and identify, because some other people may have a different kind of memory about their,
I do not dispute the advantages.
about their involvement in the scheme. But before we come to that, and Professor Kila, I will come to you with that line of thought. Let's take a short break. Again, here on this Live, this Sunday Talk Show. When we return, the conversation will continue. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to This Live, the Sunday Talk Show here on the Arise News Channel. With me, I still have Professor Bola Akintoye, Director General, Bolitac Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and a professor now of international relations at the Achievers University, Owo, Ondo State, as well as Professor Anthony Kila, Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies here in Lagos. Well, Professor Akintoye, I've listened to you, your even-handed criticism of the NYSC scheme, but I take particular notice of the fact that, look, we have to continue to praise General Yakubu Gowon for his vision, because he wanted that scheme to integrate Nigeria. Many Nigerians before 1973 did not know any other part of the country. They had never left their villages. But the NYSC gave people the opportunity to discover their country. And in the process, there are many families today that are NYSC families. In fact, many babies were made in the course of the scheme in the last 50 years, from 1973 to date. Some 50-year-olds are NYSC babies. You know what happened in camp. Yeah. You know what happened when we all went for primary assignment. In fact, in my own case, in the old Bender State, I learned how to talk to a woman from Isako, a woman from Edo, how to greet them specially. If I stayed in my hometown, the center of Nigerian civilization, I probably would not be so vast, and all of that. So there's something to be said for the NYSC. But it's unfortunate. The story of the NYSC is a story of Nigeria.
Yeah.
Today, parents don't want their children to be sent to certain parts of the country. But in those days, nobody bothered. You know, my best friend went to Bauchi. Everybody went everywhere. My brothers went to all parts of the country. But today now, parents are struggling. Please don't push my child to that part of the country. It's not Gowon's fault.
We are not in disagreement.
I know. You made that point.
The issue is simply that on the one hand, you are preaching the gospel of national unity and integration.
Yes.
Factories.
And on the other hand, implementing, you now have policies that are antagonizing that one. That's just what I'm saying.
It's not Gowon's fault.
No,
it's probably the fault of his successors. But you raise a good question. How do we reform the NYSC? You have proposed 2 years.
Oh dear.
Nobody wants to spend an additional 2 years on the NYSC. Some people have been saying maybe military training should be introduced. So there are ideas about how it can be reformed. In fact, the bigger reform is that people are saying the stipend that is given to the
33,000
to the persons should be increased.
We should go beyond that.
Professor Gila, you also went through NYSC.
Yes.
You studied in the UK.
Yes.
Many of you people don't come back home to do NYSC.
I think the NYSC, I agree totally with you that, you know, the original idea, actually with both of you, that the original idea was a fab idea, you know, to get people to know each other and to get a better sense of the country. But that said, though, let us also notice this, that there are countries in the world, from the UK to the United States, where people have not left their villages before. And those countries are great, maybe greater than Nigeria on many aspects. So this idea of the opportunity to discover ourselves is not, I think it's a good idea, but it's not as great as people make it. The reason why we have problem with ourselves is not because we don't know ourselves. It's because some people decide to use ethnicity to divide and to divide and to rule Nigerians. So the idea of the state subsidizing tourism tour, to go and find a girlfriend or a boyfriend outside your cradle of civilization with people like Rebecca Batty pompously called their own, the center of civilization is often on one side, you know, to each his own. I believe in a reform of the NYSC thoroughly. I think the NYSC of today as it stands is archaic, is redundant, and should be totally reviewed, otherwise scrapped, as a matter of fact. Let me be clear. I think the NYSC of the future, to take note, actually, the NYSC of today is an NYSC that only the children of the people who do not have connection go to where they're posted. Exactly. Most people are trying to get their children where they go. And if you go to the best companies in Nigeria, the most promising organization, I'm willing to bet any of the viewers that 80% of the people there are there through recommendation or any kind of connection or sort. The children of the people who are serving in most oil and gas industries are children of somebody. The children of people serving in institutes of international relations are children of people. So and by the way, NYSC is not for all Nigerians, it's only for graduates. So we're doing something for what are the percentage of graduates, for just graduates, and then we're doing something among graduates, we're even discriminating. I believe that the reason why that is going on is because of scarcity. I think a good reform of the NYSC is to make it voluntary, optional. And when we do it, we should change what we use them for. One of the biggest errors, one of the biggest crime NYSC has done, with good intention, by the way, is to use NYSC to supplement lack of teachers. You get people from universities to go and teach. You see, that kind of mindset, no matter how much you need teachers, it tells you how little we understand education and how little importance we attach to it. Your knowledge of English or math or biology or physics is different from your ability to teach it. Teachers should be qualified. You can't just pick somebody and let them stand in for teachers. It's a very wrong thing. I think that approach should be changed. Given that we're proposing solutions, my proposal for NYSC is that it should be something that is optional, and those who go should then go to something that is more paramilitary that you decide to go. Maybe they should be in charge of security. Maybe they should be in charge of data gathering, something that will really enhance them. Otherwise, let everybody finish and continue their life. It is not the duty of the state to be training graduates. This thing, you see, we say it and it sounds as if it's a good idea, but that's commonsensical nonsense. This idea of thinking instead of to be teaching graduates to get skills, what do they call it? That's not the duty of the state, to be getting people to get acquisition skill. They've gone to a degree, let the university teach them how to learn, then individually they pursue their career. Where fatalistically some will fail, some will succeed. It's life. The state needs to guarantee security, equal chance, and a chance for people to invest and to learn and trade. And in a minute, and that's my idea of this. When we start doing this this helping the nation to discover itself, I think it's just platitude. And it's one of what I've wasted our life over 60 years, because we keep on doing the ism, the identity politic, Africanism, Nigerianism. That does not help. Let's talk about roads, schools, less mosquitoes, and things that work. And that is the functional thing that the state should be doing. A key thing that we have now is security. And I think that in reviewing the NYSC, we need to think of that. I think in all this, one good thing that NYSC is being used for is election. That's a very high moment where you look at all the people handling election are graduates, and it gives them a motive in their life. And if we had passion and we could create symbolic things, it will be said in Nigeria there are two kinds of graduates now. The ones whose graduation fell during the election cycle and the one who fell during the election cycle. So hopefully, when you write the history of 50 years of NYSC, if it stands, you'll be looking at graduates who did election but did not do election. But as Dr. Ruben Abati said, the history of NYSC, or the story of NYSC, is the story of Nigeria, because even these bad things that happened to NYSC, now students or young graduates are being connected to, they're involved to election rigging and thuggery and things like that. At a very early age in life, we're exposing them to such things. I think shame on those who, for their own desperation, corrupt the young. Because the young should be idealists, they should be dreamers, they should be bold, visionaries, not so careful of material needs. But we were breeding such generation. And we do not see the gravity of this, because what will happen when somebody at that very age of being a graduate, at that very young age of being a graduate, is already so worried about material needs, it kills their ability to invent and to grow. They will become, not because I don't think traders are great, but they become mercantilistic in all their views in life. And that is why we have little inventors and little visionaries. We need more, not less. I stopped in NYSC to say something quickly about prisons so that I'm not misunderstood. I do not say they should build more prisons so that we can get more criminals. What I think is that we already have congested prisons. It's like saying doctors, people are studying medicine so that people can be ill. No, it's that there are enough sick people to be treated. It's because there are enough people who are... Most of the prisons have people who are yet to be tried. So the new prisons, again, we talk about the future. The new prisons should have 3 layers in each prison. You have a level 1 for the pre-tried, you have another level for the tried ones, then you have one for light criminals and very high criminals. There's some criminals that you cannot mix. As you can see, unfortunately, I've done some studies on prison. Like Professor Quintero, I've been to prison too. Many. I have toured prisons in West Africa.
Okay, it's a tour of prison.
Yeah, unlike him, I didn't go to prison. I toured prisons.
Okay, but to go back to the point about the NYSC, I guess that the point here is not that it should be scrapped, but that it can be reformed.
If it cannot be reformed, let it be scrapped. I want to be said, reform or scrap. I consider it to be scrappable. I do not believe it's an essential need. If we cannot make it work for this century, for the psychology of the new generation that we are breeding, let us scrap it. These are very fragile people. Let's not put them in harm's way.
Okay, but even if you want to scrap the NYSC, the National Youth Service Corps in Nigeria, then that's a matter of law.
Yeah.
That will require the National Assembly to take the consequential legislative steps.
About it, yes.
But as of this moment in Nigeria, graduates, except you qualify under the exemptions within the Act, maybe you are ill, or you have passed a certain age, or you are married, you need preferential posting, and all of that, or you are dead, and all of that, the law says you must serve. And the importance of it, for you to work, particularly within the public service of Nigeria, you must have an NYSC certificate, an NYSC discharge certificate, or an NYSC exemption certificate, as we have seen famously in the case of former Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, who had to step down because she got into high office and she had not taken the option of serving our country. So that's the other part of it. So there's that legal part of it.
We need to be
but
looked at.
For now, we have the NYSC until the Enabling Act is repealed.
We have it.
Every Nigerian is required to serve his country as a graduate.
As a graduate. Otherwise, don't graduate.
You see, Ruben, one major reason, and a critical one, that the NYSC has to be sustained and reformed, is that it is a very good organ, instrument to re-energize all efforts to unite Nigeria. Nigeria is so polarized as of today. When I was talking about 2 years, you see, 1 year, you can stay in one community.
Yeah.
The other year in another community. During the 2 years, there must be intensive training, both militarily, especially knowledge about patriotism. Please, people, the notion of Nigeria does not exist in the minds of those people who call themselves Nigerians.
Yeah.
Now, that NYSC should be an opportunity, a place where you teach nationalism, where you teach principles of integration. Now, the people who will come out after 2 years, please, it's not just many people serve NYSC.
Anyway, Prof.
6 months, they are away. They are in America, and they will come back and they are giving certificate.
Prof, I get your point about patriotism, about serving the country. After all, in Israel, they have 4 months of orientation and 3 years of compulsory military service. The Americans have the American Peace Corps. But there must be that sense of nation, of nationhood, that connection between the individual and the country. The problem we have here is that the average Nigerian is severely disconnected, and there's this alienation between government and the people. That's the fundamental thing that we need to address. As we move on to our next topic, in Pakistan. Supporters of Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan celebrated in Lahore on Saturday after he was granted broad protection from arrest in multiple legal cases against him. The ruling at a high court in Islamabad struck a blow to the government in a standoff that has sparked days of rioting by Khan's followers and raised the specter of widespread unrest in the country. After the court granted him bail, Khan spent hours more in the building as he and his legal team were locked in apparent negotiations over his exit from the site. As he headed to his home in the eastern city of Lahore, Khan put out a video statement from his vehicle, saying the Islamabad police tried to keep him within the courthouse through different tactics, and authorities allowed him to travel only when he threatened to tell the public he was being held there against his will.
This is a celebration time. Khan Saab's coming back to Zaman Park, and we are very thankful to Allah Almighty. Alhamdulillah, our leader, our respectful leader, Khan Saab, is coming back, and inshallah, despite of all these challenges, Khan Saab will become, inshallah, the future Prime Minister.
But of course, Imran Khan, the cricket superstar, Professor Kila, your fellow cricketer, called for freedom protests on Sunday. And he has accused the military of being behind these travails. And he's been suffering from those travails since last year, when he raised the point that state officials were involved in an assassination attempt against him last year. And Pakistan, dealing with economic issues, looking for money from IMF, has further compounded the situation with this political crisis. But let me start with you. We're talking about a cricket star, and you say you love cricket. So let's talk about Imran Khan in Pakistan.
Well, I think, these, as an international figure, a personality, more than just a person, his case fascinates the world. Pakistan, Professor Kindera will teach us better, seems to always have one crisis on the other. There seem to be a state of perennial crisis in there. And somehow they get by. But I want to note two things. The doggedness of Imran Khan and going on with this thing. You know, he's been visiting state leaders, have been making interviews. He's very connected, you know, with people in the world. I think partly because of the sporting, partly because of his own personality as well. But also the judiciary, you know, in this kind of situation where you can see the intention of government, which is to hold this former prime minister down. Somehow the judiciary has found his voice and his independence to stop them from doing so. I do not think the government is doing itself a favor by hitting world news for crisis, because when they do that, it affects their ratings in the world and it affects international relationship with them. My advice to Pakistan is to find a way to look for tranquility and stability. And one of the ways to do it is this man's case, they should not feel as if they've lost. They should not be, government has lost, let us try and do something against. Because I suspect what the police was doing was trying to find a way to hold him down on other charges, or say they want to question him more. That is still a kind of vindictive retaliation or personal battle that is going on. Very soon, the popularity of the government will be tested, not because of election and anything, but because of their policies and act for the people. Very soon, people will start wondering if they should stick with this government or are they missing the former prime minister. And this is where, and the international dimension of it, is where the government is not playing the right game. Because they're dealing with somebody who is popular outside Pakistan. And if they don't act well, he's going to block doors for them, because investors, possible partners, will start waiting for this government to go.
Well, Professor Kila, you are right about the role of the judiciary. After all, it was the Supreme Court of Pakistan that ruled on Friday that the detention of Imran Khan was unconstitutional, unlawful. And then, of course, you are right about the international dimension. After all, Imran Khan was pushed out because of the IMF bid appeal.
Exactly.
And Pakistan still has issues with, you know, the IMF, and some people are still pointing in the direction of the International Monetary Fund. But IMF says no, that's conspiracy theory. But you know the politics of IMF, World Bank in these developing countries. Professor Akintenewa, what do you think?
There are two critical issues involved. The first is the relationship between the court and the government. The second one is the issue of populism. You know, the position of the people on critical national questions. Now, at the level of the court and the government, you can begin to imagine a situation of respecting in order to disregard. The government wants to give the impression that it is respecting the court ruling by allowing Imran Khan to get out of the court, within the court, but without going beyond the vicinity of the court, with the intention that, okay, we will comply with the court judgment, but you will not go beyond the premises. So they were doing whatever was and is humanly possible to keep him there. Now the issue is that, why is it difficult for any government, whether constitutionally established or otherwise, to comply with court judgment? And Dr. Abati rightly pointed out that it is, or it was, the Supreme Court of the land in Pakistan that ruled, that described the detention, the arrest of Imran Khan as unlawful. So that one, I think that governments should learn to comply, to obey, to give due respect to court judgments. And in Nigeria, we have that experiences in the past. Our government will respect the law when it is convenient.
So it shouldn't be so. Military.
Yes, the military.
Yes.
And now when I talk about populism, you can see now that increasingly in the world now, it appears now that the people are now bent not only in taking the laws into their hand, but to ensure, in fact, to give a concrete meaning to the principle of self-determination.
Yeah.
The law is there. You government, you want to do this, but they're already there, all right, to confront, for instance, whatever decision the government wants to do. It's being revealed in many parts of the world
With the people.
with the people.
With the people.
So this is in our own constitution. 1999 constitution, you say, we, the people of Nigeria. That one is not really we, but this type of we in Pakistan and elsewhere, the people are now showing determination actually to ensure this time what they call freedom protest.
Well, it's Imran Khan who has called for the freedom protest, and we hope that that will not degenerate into a blowout in Pakistan.
It has 5 hours ago now.
Because that's the last thing they need in that
Exactly.
country.
Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Professor Akintenwa. Thank you very much, Professor Anthony Kila. You've been watching This Day Live, this Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.